Yes guys, how's it going? Welcome back to a new video on another lovely sunny day in Newcastle. Hope you guys are all enjoying your week so far. Sat in the shade, it's boiling, I'm hiding from the sun and the sun is shining, the birds are tweeting and Newcastle are getting ever closer to bringing in not just a summer signing but a transfer record signing in the form of Marc Guehi, the centre-back from Crystal Palace and England. Anthony Gordon has said he'd love for him to join the club. Guehi himself is open to the move and has praised and said how much he loves St James's Park. And it appears in the reports that Newcastle are getting ever closer. We're going to talk about that in today's video after a brief scare, actually. As of yesterday, it was reported that Newcastle had their initial bid rejected. We'll talk a little bit about why and how that's happened and what Newcastle plan to do next. So if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to go ahead and hit that big red button. As I mentioned, loads of videos out at the moment. Only a few days away from the Cellar Cup pending. I am planning to be there on both Friday and Saturday, depending on what happens. Obviously, there's lots of reports at the moment of protests around Newcastle and it's unsure whether it will go ahead. Actually, the most recent statement through from Newcastle Council is that they have plans in place to allow pretty much all events to go ahead. So it looks like things at the moment will be going ahead. Regardless, Newcastle are building up to the season. You know, 2 friendlies this weekend and then literally just over a week away from the start of the season at home to Southampton. So we haven't got long left. Could we have some new faces in the door in time? Asula, the striker from Sheffield United, who was linked again at the end of last week. Newcastle, you know, it felt like nothing's happened for a while this summer. And then all of a sudden, as I say, it's like buses. We're getting linked to a few players that have, you know, very quickly moved into advanced talks. It's not been like previous summers where there's kind of, or even January windows, where there's kind of been a new name every few days. I feel like this summer, I think, possibly to the annoyance or frustration of some fans, because I think when you are listening to talks and there's reports coming out, it's exciting, there's players getting spoken about. It hasn't really been the same this summer, and you could argue that it's been because Newcastle have had a lot of change. Amanda Stavey leaving, Paul Mitchell coming in, Eddie Howe actually kind of openly saying that he kind of wanted a reassurance in this job. You know, all of that added to the fact we haven't been linked with anyone, I think it's kind of got people going, is it not going well? Or is it actually the complete opposite? And Newcastle have been very clever with how they've done their summer business this time round. You could even talk about the fact that a lot of the kind of reports got started with the Asula one, especially, were actually reports from the Sheffield United side. You know, it wasn't as much the usual suspects with regards to Newcastle and the local promoters. It was journalists. It was kind of more the Sheffield side. So I wonder if that's because Newcastle are keeping their mouth shut and aren't really letting on to some of this stuff. So, and then when it does happen, it's moving very quick. But as I say, Asula originally reported to have been getting its medical just a few days ago. Keith Downey and Sky Sports are actually saying that he is in Newcastle today. I mentioned this yesterday. It's unusual for a player to manage to get into Newcastle, get into the training ground or into the stadium, and there'll be no photos. I know what we're like. And we spot these people if we're not around the stadium or the training ground. So the fact that there's been no kind of photos from fans yet makes me think he's maybe not here. But it would very much seem like that third choice striker, that backup striker, or even striker for the future in Asula looks very close. But what also looks to be close is, you know, what could be Newcastle's transfer record signing in Marc Guehi very, very soon. Reports broke at the end of last week that Newcastle were in for the player and since then have just continued to flow. Bearing in mind that our current record transfer is Alexander Isak for what's thought to be a fee of around 63 million. The reports are that Newcastle could well have to pay upwards of 65 for Guehi. Now, there was a little bit of worried last night. There was a flutter of different reports. Ornstein was saying that things were close. Fabrizio Romano was saying that Newcastle were in deep discussions. Sky Sports and Keith Downey came out and said that the first bid was in fact rejected, which a lot of people, I think, got slightly worried about. Keith Downey has come out again today, just trying to reassure people, and I guess, sounds slightly worrying to hear that a bid was rejected, but I think it's standard practice in most bartering, even if you went to a dodgy market. And I tell you what, I went to Gran Canaria, they haven't got too many fake Newcastle tops there just yet, so we must still be growing. We haven't got quite to that level where Gran Canaria have made the fake Newcastle tops, but anyway, if you were going to buy one, they wouldn't accept your first offer and you wouldn't accept theirs. So I think it's pretty standard that Palace go, well, we want 65. And you know what it is? I don't even necessarily think it's as much about they want more and more money. I think it's probably a little bit of that. I think Newcastle understand that the fee that they want is around that 65 million mark. Well, in fact, or the reports are, it's more along the lines of how the fee is actually paid. It's thought that Newcastle are now preparing a second bid. Some reports actually saying that Newcastle have placed a second bid. Some reports saying they haven't just yet, but are in the process of doing so. And that this second bid would have a larger upfront fee. It's thought that Newcastle could look to go in with an upfront fee of 40 million. Really, Newcastle want to pay nothing up front, if possible. In this world of FFP with like rolling years of how much is spent, we want to spend as least of that as possible up front and roll it on forever. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, they probably want some of that money. They want to be able to go out and spend what they can at the end of this window. It's thought that Newcastle could push to 40 million up front with further payments along the line. And part of that is also thought to be the fact that Guehi has a sell-on clause with Chelsea. So if Newcastle were to pay 65 million, Chelsea would still, depending on what it is, 10%, 12, 20%, potentially Palace may have to push 12, 13, 14 million of that back to Chelsea as well. So although they personally want 65 million, it could well be that they aren't going to get that much because they have to push some of it onto Chelsea. But, as I mentioned earlier, as Keith Downey said with Sky Sports, it's like a standard bartering. Nobody accepts the first offer. Never accept the first offer. Go in a second time. Look, ask for more or push harder. And the hope is that Newcastle will make an agreement. I think what's really positive for us, actually, is what the reports continue to say, is that Newcastle are the only team at the table. I think other teams are interested in the player, but Newcastle are the ones in there first, and Newcastle are the ones sat at the table, hopefully halfway through the main course, ready to pay the check, as opposed to, and this is another thing as well, is why you don't want to get to a point where Newcastle potentially start to try and, outdo them. I think Newcastle will have to just pay the money in this situation. I think if Newcastle start lingering around and saying, well, what about this fee? What about that? A little bit less here, a little bit less there. That's when Palace might go, oh, you know what? There's actually interest over here. And you guys are kind of taking your time, or not taking the mick, but just this is taking longer than we want it to. Someone over here might just pay us the 65 and we'll be done. So I think that's one thing you could say that is potentially slightly concerning, is that because the first bid was rejected, let's make sure we get the second one right and that it can go through quickly. And that's what a lot of the reports are saying, is that Newcastle aren't there to play or take the mick. We are there to do business and hopefully get it done quickly. As I mentioned earlier in this video, Southampton is just over a week away. We haven't really got time to be bartering over the final few pounds. And look, I say that trivially. Good God. If only I could talk. It's a lot of money. But we have it. We dealt with FFP earlier this window, and Newcastle should be allowed to spend now. I think what's also promising, as I said earlier in this video as well, is that Guehi himself is up for the move. He's spoken publicly about of the fact that he's a fan of St James's Park. He's good friends with Gordon. He knows Livramento. He knows Lewis. Newcastle just casually buying up all of the young stars of Chelsea. And I tell you what a back four that would be. I guess my concern would possibly be, and I've discussed this previously, and I would love to know your guys' thoughts down below. I think I did mention it briefly yesterday. Would you be happy with the window if it was? Because, at the time of Asula kind of coming out in the reports, there was lots of I guess, frustration that was the first name to be heard. We wanted a centre-back, we wanted a right winger, and we wanted a striker. We're bringing Guehi as that centre-back. Bearing in mind we scored more goals than we've ever scored last season. So technically speaking, we have the players to score the goals. It's the defending we need to sort out. Guehi and Pope back. Guehi at the back. Asula is that striker that hopefully we won't need if Isak always plays. If we're spending 15 on him, 65 on Guehi, that's 80 million. Will Newcastle have money to spend in that right wing position? I hope so. Maybe it doesn't have to be that star name that we've discussed previously. Maybe it just can be some extra player over in that area of the field. Would you be happy if we ended the window and it was we've dealt with PSR and we've bought Guehi and Asula? Or do you need to see that right winger as well? I think Murphy's been fantastic in pre-season, but I expect us to still go in for a right winger. I'll be interested to know what the money pot is. If we do, because we are, as I say, record signing in Guehi, it'll be interesting to see what we've got left over for that right wing position, and hopefully there is plenty still there to do some work before the end of this window. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments on Guehi. The second bid coming in. Hopefully Newcastle can tie this one up quick before the start of the season. I wonder what Fabian Shaw's thinking right now. I'm assuming if you pay 65 million for Guehi, I think you got to play him. Despite the fact that I don't know that Shaw deserves to be losing his spot just yet, I can see where we're going with those 4 fantastic young players for the Newcastle over the next few years. Let me know your thoughts on Asula, and is Jacob Murphy the man to play right wing all this season? Those birds squawking obviously don't think so. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. Loads of videos at the moment, and I'll catch you later.